Let's look at an advanced example of frame and panel construction. So I'm going to use these doors as my example. So to create something like this, I would recommend starting with the frame itself. So just trace the outline of the frame, adjust the shape. If it's necessary, convert to editable spline and adjust the Bezier handles for finer control over the curves. And now we need to make some cuts inside for these panels. Okay, so I'm going to start by outlining my outer shape. About this much. Okay, and it looks like we need to slightly adjust these two upper Bezier handles to match the shape better. Okay, that looks about right. And let's move this lower part up. Okay. So now we need to trace the rest of the lines in these doors. So I'm overlapping these parts on purpose. I'm going to show you why a bit later. So first let's adjust the overall shape. Okay. And the idea is that once you have these things ready, you can select your original part, select this inner line. Okay, make a copy by pressing Ctrl V. And delete everything except these two segments. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this line to this object, enter the spline sub-object mode, and using the trim tool I will trim these ends perfectly like this. And now all that's left is welding these corner vertices. And we have the shape ready. Just gonna isolate it so you can see the result. And I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so make sure you copy your original first so you don't mess it up first before attaching the new line. And use the same technique to add the rest of these panels. The more complicated the design, the more time it's probably going to take. I'll try to get pretty close to this reference image. Okay, so copy, delete everything except these, attach together, trim the ends, and finally weld the corners. The technique is pretty simple. And for this center part, I'm going to do it a bit differently. I'm going to create one line, actually one half of this line. When you have symmetrical elements, it's easier to create just a half. And use the mirror tool, create the second half. So for example, I created this left half, and I'm gonna mirror it to the other side, make an instance first to make sure it looks right. I think it's close enough. So we can collapse it to editable spline and attach the left side. Okay, and now we just weld this center part together. Make a copy of our original outline object. Actually, first we need to copy this one down as well. Okay, now we can copy this original object and delete everything except these two segments and attach these lines. And now, as before, just trim. So it's nothing too difficult. You just have to go at it step by step and do some planning before. Okay. So you have these three elements ready. We need two more down here. Okay, I'm just gonna do it quickly. All right. I'll mirror it to the other side. That's close enough. And this time we can skip the copying since these pieces are the last ones. And just attach it. Okay. Now trim. And weld the corners. Okay. I'm gonna attach the rest of the pieces as well. And that's our basic frame. Quick and painless. Let's extrude it just by 4 millimeters. You can also use a bevel modifier. For example, you can set the first bevel to 4 centimeters or 5 centimeters, and the second one to give a slight bevel to the edges. So let's bevel them at 1 millimeter. Okay, so 0.1 and outline minus 0.1. And this way you have the frame with the edges beveled. Looks like I have some unwelded vertices here or something. Yep. You can see that there are 2 vertices selected, so we need to weld them. And now we should have the holes on the bottom as well. Okay, so that's the basic frame for this door. Now the inner part is a bit tricky. So since it has an applied molding and pretty elaborate panel inside of it, I think we need to create it from 3 pieces instead of 2. So for example, I'm just going to treat this upper part as if it was solid wood like below. I'm not going to go into mesh. So for example, first let's create the panel. I'm just creating a rough shape to cover all the holes. Extrude it by like 1 centimeter. And maybe put in the center. Maybe a bit deeper. Okay, let's put it in the center. Okay, and that's the basic panel. And now we need to create the applied moldings. So just to save some time and do it as efficiently as possible, what I'm gonna do is first I'm gonna increase the interpolation steps for the frame, just to make it smoother. And then I'm gonna copy my frame object, delete the bevel modifier, and delete the outer line. So all that's left is I'm isolating the selection, and all that's left are these lines on the inside edge of the frame. And once we have these lines, it's pretty quick to create the profile. I'm gonna try to outline it, trace it. So a little bit up. Okay, a little bit up. A little to the side. Again, it's not so important to get it perfectly copied from our reference, as long as it looks close enough. Okay, let's fillet this. And maybe let's add a small bead over here. Okay, and just chamfer this hard corner. Right. Maybe something like this. And let's just use the bevel profile modifier. Pick the profile. I'm going to disable the capping. It looks like it's inside out, so I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Okay, now it is inside out. So let's add normal modifier. So this is going to be our applied molding. I think it's a bit too round. I'm going to modify my profile a bit. Maybe like this. I think it looks pretty good. Maybe just chamfer this hard corner. That's good. So unhide all. Make sure the molding is placed in the right position. Okay, maybe like that. And that's our basic frame and panel. All that's left is adding this inner element here. And this one is going to be a bit tricky. And I'm going to try to do it like this. Again, I'm going to copy my original frame. Press Ctrl V to copy. And delete the bevel modifier. Delete the outer line. And let's select all the splines. And try to use the outline tool to bring them in. So it's a bit like this. Looks like these ones go the other way around. Okay. As you can see, the shape gets pretty messed up. Let's make sure that these are the same amount all over. So first let's start with this. Go to outline, just test the direction. So we need negative value here and about -13. -13. Positive value here, 13. 13 here as well. And -13 here. And now we need to adjust the Bezier handles manually, since sometimes the outlined result is not so nice. And just trust your eye and try to make it about the same curvature as the original. Or at least close enough. Okay, that looks good. Maybe let's make these a bit closer. So these things can sometimes be a bit tricky to get right. Okay, let's round this one. Right. Make sure this part is straight, or almost straight. Fix the curvature. These Bezier handles sometimes don't outline so well, so that's why we have to do this manual work to fix it. It can be a bit tedious, but I haven't found a real solution to do this automatically. So that's the way you do it. And around this part and these corners here. And it doesn't need to be perfect since it was probably handmade and wasn't perfect originally as well. So nowadays when everything is made by machines in factories, it's different. But back when they made this classic furniture, the perfection wasn't the goal. It had to look good. But the standards were different then. Okay, and we can probably just mirror this part to the right side. Okay. And now let's get rid of everything else except these inner lines we have. Alright. And we're going to use a bevel profile modifier. Again, first the profile. Something pretty simple like this. Rounded inner corner. And a bit of chamfering on these hard edges. So select your object, use bevel profile, pick the profile, and rotate it inside out. And for this one we want to cap the starts and the ends. I think the bevel is unneeded. So let's get rid of that. And you can fix some parts that don't look right manually. And that's pretty close. Unhide all. And maybe these vertices are a bit wrong. And I'm just doing it by eye just to make sure it looks good. Okay, so not perfect, but pretty good, I think. Let's just move it out a little bit so you can see the whole profile. And that's our door. So as you can see, you can get some pretty elaborate ornate looking results with some simple techniques. And let's just map it as well, just so you can see how I would do it. Okay, so the first step for mapping it would be selecting the base panel and these little smaller overlaid panels. And maybe map them with a box map or planar map. I'm just gonna go with box map. Looks like we need to make it larger. Okay, so let's say 220. And make it go on the x-axis. Okay, so you have mapped these panels, you can freeze them. Actually, looks like I didn't add the map to the base panel, so I'm just gonna drag and drop it, freeze it, freeze this piece, and we can map our base frame now. Okay, so I'm gonna add an edit poly modifier, and I'm gonna isolate my model. And what I'm going to try is select these vertices and connect them. Okay, sometimes when you connect vertices like these, you get some weird side effects over here. You can see one of them, and this is not a good result, so you have to try a different place first. For example, I'm going to try this part, and it connects without any problems. So now if I try to connect these again, and the glitch is gone, and it works very well. So just connect these parts. No need to use the slice plane for this example. Okay, the glitch again. So if you get the glitch, just try at a different corner, and it should fix that. Okay, and it actually looks like we do need slice plane here, but just for this part here. Okay, I'm just gonna delete these edges or remove them. And use the slice plane for the vertical cuts only. Okay, so one cut here and one and on the other side. All right, just gonna get rid of this, and now we can quickly map this thing. Let's add edit poly, select all the vertical pieces, and add UEW map. Okay, 200 by 200. And that's nice. Add another edit poly, select poly subobject mode, press Ctrl I to invert selection. Okay. And map it horizontally. Okay, let's unhide all. This looks great. And all that's left are these smaller moldings. And these are a bit more tricky to map, so I'm gonna do it step by step again. So first, let's map all the vertical parts. Okay, this is the easiest step. Okay, that's good. Add another edit poly modifier and select the horizontal parts. This is getting a bit more tricky. And most of the time, if the door would not be seen too close up, it would be good enough to just invert your selection and map all these parts, just a simple horizontal map. But since I want to make this perfect, just to show you how it's done, I'm gonna do it the right way. Okay, so these little segments will be horizontal. Let's set it at 120. And rotate 90 degrees. Okay. And finally we need to make some mapping for the diagonal pieces. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first add. Okay, looks like I missed some parts here. Okay, so we have the verticals and horizontals mapped, and now I'm gonna add edit poly for the diagonals. So it might be easier to actually not just select the diagonals. Okay, I'm not gonna try to get some accurate selections there. I'm just gonna select everything like this and deselect instead the parts I don't need to map again. So like that. Again, the same angle is going to be used over here. You can see that they go in the same direction. And deselect these parts that don't need to be mapped here. And finally, the same direction is actually the top part is a bit different, so let's leave that. Okay, so and UVW map for these. Set to 200. Y-axis and rotate. That's something close to 45-degree angle. And you can see the mapping is perfect. Add another edit poly. Let's try inverting the selection. Okay, and just deselect these horizontal parts that are already mapped correctly. This kind of detail is only noticeable in close-ups. But it's good to know how to do it efficiently. So again, a box map. Set the Y-axis and rotate in the correct direction. Okay, and finally one last step. Edit poly, select these upper polys and add the map. And this one is going to be rotated at an angle like this, almost horizontal, but slightly more towards diagonal. Okay. And all the mapping is perfect. all the wood grain is going in the correct direction. Some scale issues here, that's fixed. Okay, unhide all, unfreeze. And you have this very complex door with applied moldings and applied layers on the panels. Everything mapped correctly, and it didn't take that much time. So there you have it. Just mirror it to the other side. Okay, just group first, mirror to the other side. And that's the door.